Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in for this installment of the Who You Can Become speaker series. My name is JC Dara, and I am the Associate Director of Alumni and Student Engagement for Undergraduate Studies. I'm pleased to welcome you to this installment called The Research Road to Graduate School, where three alumni panelists will speak about the Undergraduate Research Opportunity Program and the Honors in the Major program, and how they use the tools they learned in those programs to start their journey in grad school and beyond. Before we get started, I did want to make sure we thanked Latika Young and her team at the CRE, Dr. Craig Filar and his team, Dr. Michael Franklin, who oversees the honors in the major program, and Julie Decker, the president of the Alumni Association. I'm pleased to introduce our moderator, Ava Dubell, who is a sophomore on the pre-med track majoring in biological sciences and humanities. She is currently the community service chair for the Honor Student Association, and she will be leading the discussion tonight. So I will turn it over to her.
Hi, thank you to all our speakers for participating. If you could you introduce yourselves briefly?
Hello. Hi, I'm Henry. I graduated in 2017 with a degree in biology, right? And I'm a dentist now, right? But when I was in FSU, I was part of the Honors in the Major program. I was also part of the Europe program. Europe helped me get into a research opportunity, right? And from there, I was able to just learn and just take all that culmination of work and bring it with myself into grad school. And now this is where it led me today.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Salma. I graduated in the spring of 2020 during COVID. I'm currently a third-year medical student at FSU's College of Medicine. I'm in the Sarasota campus doing my clinical rotations right now. I participate in the honors in the major and Europe. I did my Europe project with the College of Engineering, and then I did my honors in the major. Basically, in similar to my capstone, I was an interdisciplinary medical sciences major. So yeah.
Hi, I'm Sophia. I graduated December of 2022 with a degree in English from, of course, Florida State. I was in the honors in the major program there. I completed my thesis my junior year, and now I'm a graduate student in the English department at the University of Pennsylvania.
Thank you guys so much. Can you tell us a little bit about your time at FSU and in the honors in the major program specifically? You can go first. Whoever wants to go first can.
So during my time at FSU, I had a goal set in mind and I had planned on taking full advantage of what the school offered to the students to reach that goal, right? So I didn't initially make the honors program directly out of high school. So once I was a freshman, I looked into the requirements of being in the honors program, and I saw I could graduate with honors by being in the program or by being part of honors in a major, right? So I just decided to do both. And although I enjoyed taking the honors courses, I found more fulfillment through achieving my honors in the major thesis, right? So it was through Europe that I was able to find a professor and create a good relationship with him, right? And it had led me down a path to earn my honors in the major thesis. I was in a fruit fly lab studying genetics, and my thesis consisted of researching a strange occurrence in a well-known genetic test involving the ovaries of fruit flies, right? So my experience was challenging. It taught me time management, gathering and analyzing literary articles, and discussion of difficult topics, right? So it was very rewarding to defend my thesis to a committee of professors, and I consider this just a great time of learning when I was at FSU.
And what was your honors in the major thesis?
So my honors in the major thesis was regarding a specific fruit fly line in the genetics code. Essentially what it was is we encountered a phenomenon that was a genetic mutation within the developing wings of a fruit fly, right? So through this project, I was able to learn how to stain the wings, how to place them on a microscope slide to analyze them. Alongside the research, we had met once a week to discuss as part of the honors, as part of the Europe program, we met once a week to discuss how we can develop our projects and organize our poster boards for the research symposium. And this ultimately helped me with my public speaking and truly challenged my understanding of my research topic. So, and then I had grown comfortable with my research professor, right? And he just continued to allow me to be a part of his research team, which led me to my project for my honors in the major thesis.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. Salma, you can go next if you'd like.
Okay, so I had a similar story in terms of how I got into honors in the major. I actually didn't know about the honors college or the honors medical scholars, which is one that is specifically for pre-meds. So I only found out after the deadline for the applications. So I was always looking for a way to kind of graduate with honors without really being, you know, in the program itself from the beginning since I missed the deadline. I started out my research kind of journey with Europe initially. So that was a great way to kind of get my foot in the door and understand, you know, how to approach professors about getting a research position with them and working with them, and then what it takes for presentation, the time dedicated to it. So I did my Europe project with the College of Engineering, and we focused on flexible LED use in phototherapy. So even though it was in the College of Engineering, it was still related to my interest in medicine and in applying what I did for my research in terms of a medical aspect. I wasn't able to really continue with that project just because, as you guys know, the College of Engineering is like a completely separate campus, and that was just taking too much time to figure out the buses and stuff because I lived on campus and I didn't have a car. So I then tried to email a bunch of other professors, and I got lucky with my honors in the major faculty. She was amazing. She was actually relatively new to FSU at that point, so she was just starting her lab. She focused primarily on cardiovascular disease, so that it was a bit more related to medicine than my Europe project. And then for her, it was primarily wet lab research as well. So it was a lot of bench work, you know, dissecting mice, stuff like that, because we had to like do a lot of the organ measurements. And so it was a lot of hard work, a lot of time dedicated to it, because if I wasn't in my class or I wasn't working or I wasn't volunteering, I was literally in the lab every possible moment because it just took that much time. So my specific thesis was on the impact of sarcospan deletion on the ER stress response in obese mice. So we kind of touched some base in terms of just, you know, more microbiology, obesity, and then cardiovascular disease. I defended my thesis the spring semester of 2020, right before I graduated by a couple of months. But I was working on my thesis from the beginning of junior year.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, so I went more, of course, like a humanities route with my English degree. So how I found out about honors in the major was a professor told me about it my sophomore year, and she told me sort of like what it was all about, and I was really interested in her class. So she became my thesis director, which was great. And my junior year, I dedicated the whole year to doing my honors in the major thesis, which took me like being at the special collections at Strozier, which is a great resource if you guys haven't been. So I did my thesis with special collections. I was spending also a lot of time there. And with honors in the major, I was also able to get a grant from FSU Libraries to go to Emory University in Atlanta to do some more research on sort of what I was doing, which was children's books. And I was able to go to a couple of conferences. I went to the Meeting of the Minds in Virginia, and I went to FERC, which was in Orlando when I went. And I was able to present my research there, which gave me a lot of experience to like actually going on to defend my thesis. That same semester that I went to those conferences, I defended my thesis like 5 days after I went to the University of Virginia for Meeting of the Minds. So I had sort of like very fresh, people were coming up to me asking me questions. So I had that very fresh to defend my thesis. And in the English department, I'm not sure how it is elsewhere, but we do have to take 2 courses, one in the fall and one in the spring, with all the other people in the department doing honors in the major. So that was another sort of like full coursework that we had to do while doing it. So like my days were kind of like I was either on my computer writing, doing homework, or at special collections, studying books. And my thesis centered around children's books published in the United Kingdom and the United States from 1850 to 1950. And at Florida State, I looked at over 100 children's books from the John McKay Shaw collection. And at Emory, I looked at around 30 or 40. So I was able to have quite a lot of data from like books. And I was also able to, with the grant that I got from FSU Libraries, create a website via Create FSU. And I did like an online archive. So I inputted all my data, my metadata of all of my books on that website. So then I had sort of like another version of my thesis, but in a more, I guess not everyone wants to read a 50-page like research. So I had my website, which had a lot of data points, but it was a lot more accessible. And I was lucky enough to do that via the Pen and Ink grant with Florida State Libraries. Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for sharing. What do you think that honors in the major program helped you to accomplish? Henry, you can go first if you'd like.
So essentially what the honors in the major program helped me accomplish was just really just to get out of my shell, right? So I had heard initially that if you wanted to get into some kind of research project that you would have to reach out to professors and essentially just ask them, right? But this one helped as far as showing me a list of professors that needed help in their or that was offering a position in the research lab as far as being able to just, just join and pursue something that could be fulfilling to yourself, right? So really what I could with the honors in the major program, it gave me the foundation of understanding what research is about, right? So when you go into grad school, it helps you transition into that phase, right? Because there's a certain point where you reach your potential as far as your career, but then there's always something developing more on top of that, right? So it isn't just stop at one point. It's always going to be constantly developing whichever career you decide to choose, right? So this gives you a true understanding of where your career can go in the future and what you can do to improve yourself as far as learning more about a certain topic, whether it be about something scientific or about a literature, anything amongst those lines, right? So that's what I felt like I could accomplish with the program.
So for me with Europe, it really helped that it was a lot more structured compared to honors in the major, in that Europe was the program that provided us with a list of the available like professors who were participating. So that was very helpful. You still had to reach out to the professors, but at least knowing that they're looking for students was a good, way to do it so that we weren't fully taking on the responsibility. And that helped me when I transitioned to trying to find a professor for my honors in the major because I had done it once before. I had gotten rejected from professors before, and I knew, you're going to get through a lot of no's before you get your yes. I was much more lucky with my honors in the major faculty compared to finding a Europe faculty, just because, all of the Europe students were also looking at the same professors. Um, and then what I really loved and appreciated about the honors in the major is that it's a very independent project, whereas Europe, you kind of have deadlines to meet and you have your Europe leaders who are telling you, how to approach things and they can help you and guide you. Honors in the major, you're kind of in the grown-up level of research, you're the one who has to organize your schedule. You're the one who has to set deadlines for yourself and make sure that you meet them to be able to, we do have certain submissions that we need to make based on when we're going to defend our thesis. And then you have to find your committee members and you have to sign off on them and make sure that they all agree on a certain time where you can defend it. So it's a lot of responsibility that kind of Europe helped me reach eventually, but it does really prepare you when you get to applying for grad school or for med school, because again, it's a lot of responsibility that no one's going to help you with. You still have deadlines to meet and you need to be able to, tell yourself, okay, I need to get this done by this time. Just to make sure that you're on track and not relying on someone to tell you. The other thing is that it really helped me in terms of my writing because we had to write our thesis. Mine ended up being around 40 pages as well, so it was a lot. And before, we didn't really write to that degree, especially when you're a science major. We rarely ever take writing classes except for, our humanities classes. But in terms of writing a research paper that's up to 40 pages long is not something you're used to, and you need to understand how to approach it best, what goes in an abstract, what goes in your discussion, your methods, all of that. And that also helps you in terms of grad school, because whether you're doing a PhD or you're in med school, for my third year, we had to do a quality improvement project, which is basically a research project that you do in the hospital. And then you have to present it, whether in a poster presentation or just by writing a proposal of your project. So when I was in med school and doing my QI project, I was kind of leading my group because I already had that experience from my honors in the major thesis. So it came very easy to me, whereas not everyone had the same experience.
Yeah, so similar to that, I think completing a thesis while you're also taking a full load of classes really it's a lot of time management, a lot of balance, and figuring that out, especially it's such a big undertaking. You're doing research and you're doing like writing this really big paper. For me, also having to go to conferences and stuff like that, I got really comfortable with sort of finding different versions of my thesis for sort of different versions, which helped me also apply to grad school. For speaking on my experience applying to English programs across the country, they typically ask for a writing sample, and it's anywhere from 20 to 25 to 30 pages. Different schools have different requirements. So while I was applying to grad school, I had 5 different versions of my thesis, 5 different lengths that had to all make sense, even though they weren't the length of my original paper. So because I went to conferences and stuff like that, I got really comfortable with knowing exactly what to take out, what to put in to make different versions of my thesis work. And I think another thing about honors in the major is the fact that not everyone does research at the extent that you're doing research when it comes to sort of like applications and thinking about you as an applicant and what you can bring to the university. When I did my honors in the major research, I was alone. I had check-ins with my thesis director every so often, but the research was up to me, and it was me alone in a library for hours at a time and writing my thesis alone for hours at a time. So they sort of like know what effort you're putting in to doing this work. And also speaking about being comfortable, for me personally, oftentimes being the only humanities sort of like research in the room. I remember when I went to FERC, and I think in the couple rows near me, I was the only one that did a humanities-based project. So getting really comfortable with that and answering questions when people ask you, which is this did happen. Someone asked me, why are you here for my research? Because they didn't understand. So getting really comfortable with sort of like the research that you're doing is important. And um, no, like I think it opens up so much opportunity to be, it's kind of unique to be humanities and do a research project. I would have never known that I could have done this without my thesis director mentioning it to me my sophomore year. So I think it's made me very comfortable with like the possibilities of what a humanities degree can give you. And I think it makes you a unique applicant for grad school, and you're a lot more comfortable doing this long work for my finals. I take 4 classes a semester, and each final is a 25 to 35 page paper, and that's for 4 classes. So you do have to make the time. You really have to think about sort of like a backwards timeline to know when to start 4 papers that are all 25 to 35 pages. So doing that, I did the same with my thesis. I kind of drew a little like janky calendar and I did the dates backwards, similar to what I do now in grad school when I have 4 papers due all within the same week, and they're all the same length for different classes, the same amount of level of research. So I think that's how it's helped me.
Thank you guys so much for sharing your experiences. When you think about FSU in general, what did you get out of your undergraduate experience as a whole?
So, of course, research opportunities, right? As part of the research opportunity, I was also able to be a Garnet and Gold Scholar, right? So I believe one of the criteria was doing research, and that helped as far as, just being able to earn that reward. As far as that valuable relationship with several of the professors on campus, right? I didn't necessarily have classes with all the people that were part of my committee, but I was able to sit down one-on-one with each of them and see how I could develop my project, right? They would stretch my brain out. They would push the limits and say, well, what if you took this route rather than this route? And and then I would relay that to my main research professor and we would discuss, right? So, and then of course you have friends with like-minded goals, right? So even though I wanted to be in dental school, I'm always going to be in a mix with other people that were thinking about medical school or thinking about being any other kind of professional. And from there, we just kind of grow and develop and just kind of test each other out, right? So, and of course, you just had the same classes depending on what the majors were, right? And outside of academics, of course, FSU has a great music program. I was able to take full advantage of being able to go see some great concerts and, of course, the great athletics program. And really, just being a student there I was able to focus on my studies while taking full advantage of what other opportunities FSU was able to offer to its students. Really. Mhm.
Thank you.
Well, I loved my experience during undergrad and every day in med school. I wish I could go back. And clearly, I loved FSU so much, I decided to stay for another 4 years. So, I will say that, FSU has so many opportunities available. You just have to take the initiative to actually find them and, get involved with them. So for me, I was a pass leader. I started that my sophomore year of undergrad, and I did it all the way up to my senior year. So I was teaching Gen Chem 1, Gen Chem 2, organic and biochemistry classes. I also eventually was a TA for my biochemistry professor my junior year. And because I had my experience with being a past leader and basically coming up with my own lesson plans and standing up in front of students, you know, he trusted me in being his TA when they didn't really allow undergraduate TAs at the time, specifically in the chemistry department. I was also able to volunteer with the medical response unit that's on campus. I'm sure a lot of you, if you're not aware of the program, at least you see your responders at football games or at concerts, you know, they're always around. So that was also a great way to kind of get a foot in the door in terms of medical training, because you get your EMS certificate, and then a lot of people actually go on all the way to become EMTs through the medical response unit, and then they collaborate with, I think it's like the Tallahassee Community College does an EMT program there. With that, it also gave me the confidence to kind of, you know, create my own programs. So I was really big into mentorship, and because I missed out on the honors college application, the honors medical college application, because I wasn't aware of them, I reached out to the interdisciplinary medical sciences kind of administration, and I created the IMS ambassadors program. So that's a way for, like, you know, upperclassmen to be able to share their experiences with underclassmen, and for people to not miss out on those experiences, because they're able to kind of talk to others and see, like, oh, did you hear about the medical response unit? Did you hear about Europe or honors in the major? That's something you should look into. And then, you know, of course, so many research opportunities that you don't even have to be part of Europe or honors in the major to do research, because we are a big research university. So, you know, if you are interested, you will find someone eventually. You just have to put in the work for it. So I honestly tried to take my full advantage of everything that FSU offered, including attending operas. That was my one way to kind of cool down every year. So if you haven't been to an opera yet, I highly, highly recommend it in Ruby Diamond. They are incredible. And it kind of is a nice de-stressor, at least for me.
Yeah, I think for me is I will agree with that, sort of like all the opportunity that FSU offers, and you just kind of have to find it. I was able to go to FERC and to the ACC meeting of the minds fully paid with the CRE. So you just apply and they look over your application, and you get chosen if you can. I think the ACC meeting of the minds was extra special. I remember because it's 5 people from all 15 ACC schools. So you're there with other schools. I remember some of the schools cannot name all 15 ACC schools off the top of my head, but UNC, Duke was there, Wake Forest was there, and just other schools, and just talking to people and seeing beyond sort of the school. FERC was also great. You kind of get connected with all of Florida that's able to go there. And for me, I think I took a lot of time in the library for my research, but then there's a lot of opportunities via FSU libraries. I got the Pen and Ink grant my junior year to do my thesis. I mentioned before, I got like $1,000 to go do research somewhere else. So I went to Emory for a couple of days and I did research on their special collections. And I was able to build a website through that. And I think the level of mentorship that FSU offers is great. All my thesis director and all the members of my committee were incredibly helpful if there were ever meetings. Even after I completed my thesis my junior year, my senior year, my last semester, they invited me to like join in on them weekly to have a Zoom meeting to talk about our own research projects and we would read each other's papers, which was very cool. And an experience that, I mean, you're reading a professor's paper, someone that's been, you know, in the field for 20 something years, and you don't even have your bachelor's. I mean, it was, I mean, great. And I think for me, it's just been like, I feel like you take it for granted in the moment, and then you go back and look at it, and just like I got so much done, especially when thinking about other people and maybe like they didn't get the same opportunities, but like you really went looking for that. And again, sort of going back to the center of like grad school, all of those opportunities look great on a resume. I mean, there were awesome experiences in the moment, and then just by luck, they also look great on a resume. So it's great to like be able to do all of that and have this connection of alumni and connection of sort of like a great research opportunity. And I think for us in the English department, having those two classes that we did have to take, they weren't like study hall or anything. Like it was like more graduate level classes. I think also gave you a peek into if a lot of us thought of the grad school route, sort of give you a peek as to what that would be like. So in those classes at the end of the semester, we'd have to present a conference paper, and that's something that I've done here in grad school, a 20-minute conference paper at the end of the semester, plus your long paper. So you're kind of having to do both, which is something that I learned not just in class, but also again going to the conferences, to FERC, to the meeting of the minds. And like, yeah, I think it was just great to do it. And you have so many resources and so many people willing to help. I remember when I was doing my honors in the major thesis, I needed to put a spreadsheet of 100 over 100 books, and it was super long, and then it was super wide, and it just didn't fit onto the paper. And a librarian was just like, I can help you, and then they like fixed it for me. So like everyone's super willing to help sort of wherever you look. I had a great experience with FSU libraries. I ended up working for their special collections for my last 2 years of school, so I got that like work experience as well. And then there's always so much opportunity that professors are hearing about around Tallahassee that they will let you know about if they think you'd be a good candidate. In that same manner, I worked as an editor and a verifier at the House of Representatives in the Capitol in Tallahassee because a professor heard about it and emailed me saying that they thought that I would be good at it. So you have so much opportunity and so many people hoping that you succeed, which is great.
How did the honors in the major program in Europe prepare you guys for grad school?
So those two programs helped me prepare for grad school because as soon as I was accepted to NYU to go through the dental school, they had presented an option to do go in a semester early, essentially, to do a research project with a professor, right? So my topic in that project was just analyzing one of the arteries that would pop up in one of our typical x-rays that you would take in a dental clinic office, right? And really, once I went in, I felt like I was at home, right? So I knew what I was supposed to do. I knew what I was supposed to do as far as being able to research the relevant articles. And I was actually sitting there and going through several of the papers that were used to analyze that specific artery. And I just it was easy enough for me to comprehend, but then I started to expand more upon now the field of interest, right? So, and besides that, being in a fruit fly lab, having to work on small fruit flies, essentially dissecting them, and it's just similar to being a dentist where you're just working in some small part of the mouth. And essentially, I had built up a great like a hand skill, hand motor coordination, and that alone was just great as far as being able to help me work with my hands and then being able to behind, closed doors, working on a computer and just researching. So, and being able to form even new relationships with professors. So because it had built up my confidence in being able to speak and being able to talk to professors on a different level, that's what built up my confidence in being able to do something like that, right? And when you go into a grad program, you're expected to do some kind of research. And in order to graduate with my dental degree, you would have to sit down with a specific patient, build up their case, and bring up research backed evidence, right, into your case and provide it as to why this tooth needs to be removed, why that one needs to be saved, how important it is to the mouth, why are we choosing a specific treatment plan in accordance to that patient, right? So it's nothing different than what you would be doing as far as when you do research in a lab, right? Why are you taking these appropriate steps? Why are we researching this and how is this relevant to the general population, right? So because when you do research, there has to be a why and there has to be an end goal, right? So the end goal being, that the results are conclusive as to why we see something as far as this phenomenon, or why it's not conclusive, right? Or maybe there needs to be more that needs to be studied or evaluated upon this topic. So it really just opened my eyes as far as Europe being able to give me that confidence to find that professor. Honors in the major allowed me to continue with my professor and build up a research project and understand what it really means to put several years of your time into a specific topic, and how you can develop it and what it means to the general population, whether it's a small significant, whether you think it's small or maybe it would help the overall field, right? So when I transitioned to dental school, like I said, it just prepares you for what you need to be evaluating in the future, right? So things aren't just done just because. Everything is backed up by science. And essentially that's how we make our decisions in the clinics or in different fields. Mhm.
So for me, I mean, I kind of touched base regarding the quality improvement project that we have to do in med school. But another thing is that, if you choose a good professor, one who will really put you to work and, challenge you and want you to present a incredible project and not kind of just, slack it off to get the honors behind your degree, that will eventually lead to so many like other future, you know, um, opportunities, because even after I graduated and I had defended my thesis, because my partner and I, because we had another girl who was also doing her honors in the thesis, honors in the major in the same lab but on a different project, we were able to work and put in so much good amount of statistics that I eventually got 2 publications out of it, and they weren't published until after I had graduated. So, now that I'm, hopefully applying to residency in just a couple of months, med school doesn't really give you enough time to do proper research, and now residency is becoming more and more competitive every day. So a lot of people need research, whether you're interested or in it or not. So I'm very thankful to have those 2 publications to put on my residency application, because I did the work, at a time that I had the actual time to devote to it. And it was a project that I was passionate about, a project that I know really well. So I can still use it on my residency application, especially since I didn't graduate that far off from starting medical school. And then the other thing is like just really preparing you for everything that's going to come in the future, whether it's dental school, medical school, grad school. It's a much, much faster pace compared to undergrad. And, you know, I kind of gave my list of what I was doing. I was doing all of those things at the same time. And I still had to keep up my GPA. So that time management of learning not to get overwhelmed, of taking it one thing at a time, you know, not thinking, oh my God, I have this huge list of stuff that I had to do, and just taking it one step at a time. Let me just get my Western blots done for today, and then I'll move on to what I need to do next. That really helped when I got into med school, because all you do is study and you feel so overwhelmed and you feel like there's a million things to do and you just don't have enough time to do them. So it was really good to kind of remember that, you know, I was in that same similar level of stress before and I managed to get through it, so I can get through it this time around. So I think that other than just research, it just gives you a lot of valuable life lessons that you can take with you moving forward.
Yeah, so for me, I think I've mentioned this throughout, but just being able to know how to complete a big piece of writing, while also juggling other things. I mean, 4 classes, and then you have a life outside of school, so kind of like juggling everything with that. I think also really knowing how to present yourself, I think was big for me. I think when applying to grad school, I think I for my first few drafts, my thesis director who read them over was like, "You need to sort of, like, really show what you've really done." So being proud of the work that I've done and honors in the major and realizing that not everyone has done that and has, undertaken such a big project in undergrad while taking other classes, while working, while living life, while, you know, being a human. So I think that was something that I learned, that it is unique to do something like this, and it is possible to do something like this. I think when thinking about it from the outside and thinking like 9 months, committing 9 months, 2 semesters to a big project like this feels a bit quite like a huge undertaking, honestly. But then looking back at how I did it, like, I feel really successful, and it sets you up really well for grad school and knowing exactly how much workload there is to be done. Um, Grad school, in my experience, is a lot of reading. Professors expect you to do a lot of reading. Further classes expect you to be not just come with questions, but come with answers and come really prepared. Um, it's not quite cold calling like law school, but they will call on you and expect you to know exactly what you're talking about. So also having that balance of doing your readings, and coming to class with things read and analyzed, while also doing that for 4 other classes, like, it's quite overwhelming, but being at Florida State doing honors in the major kind of makes you feel a lot less overwhelmed about something like this because you've kind of had a peek into it. And while you're doing your honors and major thesis, you are reading theory, you are reading sources, um, while doing stuff for other classes. So I think that's helped me a lot. And I think with beyond, I think it just being able to show that you have communication skills, presentation skills, know, for me especially, the fact that I was able to build a website for my thesis was super helpful. And then I think it builds a lot of technical skill, being able to build a website, collect metadata, and build something sort of like from scratch with help, but like from scratch basically, is helpful. And I think just overall, I think Florida State really shapes you to be successful, sort of whether you decide to go to grad school, whether you decide to go straight to a job. You come out sort of with the sense of like, I know what I can do because I've done it in undergrad, and just sort of applying what you know from undergrad to different situations. I think it's always a bit of a learning curve, but I mean, you figure it out and you will. Yeah.
Thank you all so much for sharing about your experiences. For the last question before we move on to the Q&A, what advice can you give to current students who are looking to continue on to grad school?
my advice would be to keep an open mind, right? Professors, you know, it's just they're trying to help you, right? So sometimes things can come off as arrogant or maybe not in the best manner, right? But it's really about just trying to open your mind, right? So sometimes you just have to push your limits, right? And see what you could do and be open to that, right? So sometimes we can make mistakes, sometimes we can fall, right? But it's up to us to turn those mistakes into a lesson for yourself, right? So always keep your head held high. Just try, if you go for grad school, I think that's a great opportunity to just help yourself develop as a person and someone who knows how to do research, right? So you go from being just a common person to just being able to Google something to know how to Google something, right? You have that special ability to, understand what to look for, right? So me as a dentist, I mean, I try to remember everything I can from my education, right? But there's a certain degree in which there's just the common person who can just Google something random, whereas you know what to look for, right? As a researcher, you know how to step out of that zone and think outside of the box, right? So always be open for an opportunity to learn about yourself and how you can develop, right? It's it's also about, I would say it's also about learning how to present something. It goes beyond, you can go in your classes and you can memorize the facts for an exam, right? But when you're put on the spot in front of a group of people to truly test your knowledge about a certain topic, right? That takes it to a whole nother level, right? That's how you impress those who may be sitting in your clinic. That's how you take it to another level about how you discuss difficult topics with people who are in a similar field, right? It's not about just memorizing facts. It's about how you can take it to the next step, right? So anytime you have an opportunity to learn from a failure, take full advantage of it, right? So don't let something put you back. Don't let a bad experience tell you, oh, maybe I can't do this. Certainly, you should take it into consideration as to how it should shape and develop your career, but you shouldn't take it into an instance where you say, oh, I don't think this is right for me. I think you could turn it into a positive experience, right? So sometimes you just need to, get through the rough times to get through the good times. And I think you just have to really take it in stride as far as all the challenges that come with being an undergraduate and then developing in graduate school, right? And sometimes that just takes maybe a few count like sleepless nights. It just takes more reading. It just I would say play hard, but work harder, right? So it's just about developing yourself as a person, really. And I think that's really the best advice I could give.
Um, my best advice is always the same, especially when I have pre-med students who I talk to, and their first question is always, how do I get straight A's on my classes? How do I get the 99th percentile on my MCAT? And my question is always listen to the people who failed and kept going. Don't listen to the people who scored the 99th percentile first try. Don't listen to the people who got straight A's without studying, because they're not going to have advice for you. They're not going to have lessons that they can warn you about because they've been through it. So I always tell people, when you're talking to an advisor, when you're talking to someone who you're going to be in their shoes at some point, ask them, what are some of the struggles that you went through that I can, prevent? Or what are some of the lessons that you learned by going through those struggles? So, I graduated with like a 3.98 GPA. So first question they asked me, how do I get an A in organic chemistry? I'm like, I can't tell you that. Organic chemistry was not a difficult subject personally for me. That was just my experience. However, I got a 502 on my first try on my MCAT, and then I retook it within a couple of weeks, and I was able to increase my score to a 508. I was able to get from, a 50th percentile, or I think it was even as low as like the 29th percentile on one of my sections, and I raised it to a 98th percentile. That I can give you advice on, that I can help you overcome and tell you some of the mistakes I made, but I'm not going to be able to help you get an A in organic chemistry because my advice is not going to apply very well to you just because you're different. Everyone is different. And that's another reason why I also created the ambassador program is I wanted there to be a way for, freshmen, sophomore students to be able to learn from other, junior and seniors' mistakes, because that's the best way to learn in general is unless you're making the mistake yourself and you learn those lessons, is someone telling you, I struggled with this and this is how I overcame it. So, just this is how you want to approach it next time. So that I think is my best advice is always listen to people who have struggled, because failures are not something that you need to be ashamed of. It's actually something that you should be proud of because you kept going. No matter how hard it was, no matter how, depressing it was in the moment, you still kept going and you're a much better, stronger person for it. And especially in med school, we want physicians who struggled because, med school is not easy. Being a physician is not easy. We're going to see a lot of different things. And we want someone who has failed at something to have that humble feeling of, I'm not God, I'm going to make mistakes, but I'm willing to learn and I'm willing to continue to improve to be the best physician I can be and to provide you with the best care that I can.
I think my best advice would just simple, I think, to be confident in yourself and what you can do and what you have done. I think that is something that carried me when applying to grad school. It's very nerve-wracking to apply to grad school and hope you get in anywhere. I think that was sort of like the most stressful part of applying, just hoping that you shoot your shot somewhere and it lands. But I think having confidence within yourself that what you did and who you are can make it somewhere. I think more my simpler advice would just be to take advantage of the people around you at Florida State. I mean, your thesis director, your committee members are people that know you either for me, my thesis director, I've had class with her, but for my 3 committee members, I hadn't taken a class with any of them before. So when thinking of letters of recommendation, which are sort of like a big deal, at least in my field, schools want to know that they're, putting time and effort into people who other people also think that they're worth putting time and effort in. One of the good things about doing something like this is that you have professors who know you more holistically, not just as a student within their classroom, but also as a researcher, also as a human being outside of the classroom. So they can give you a really great letter of recommendation that shows who you are as a whole, not just in the classroom, but as a researcher, as a scholar in the field. And whether you think so or not, you are a scholar in the field as soon as you start doing research. So I think that's one of the things that like I would give advice to, like, really take advantage of that thesis committee that you have and sort of the resources around you. And I think in general, I think my advice would be what I said earlier, to really have confidence in yourself. And for personal statements, again, I can only speak for, English departments across the country, but they do rely a lot on your personal statement. And that is sort of where you sell yourself to the university. It's not quite like in undergrad. I remember writing a story about something, but for grad school, it was a lot more like, this is who I am as a student, this is what I did in undergrad, and this is what I will do at your university. So really showing them what you did in undergrad and being proud of what you've done, sort of like in making sure that they know that they're sort of putting the time and effort into someone who did cool things, because you did do a cool thing. Doing research is cool. It is cool. It's something unique, I guess, that not a lot of other people have done. So sell yourself and be confident in what you've done, and that not everyone has done that. And you have a great piece. If you ever need a writing sample, you have a huge piece of writing that you can take from something that was peer reviewed by your thesis director, your thesis committee. So really in terms of that more specifically, yeah, that's what I would say.
And we did have some questions come in the Q&A. So I think we'll have time for one. If we don't get to all of them, we can send it out in the follow-up email. But someone asked, were you working when completing honors in the major? And if so, how did you manage the time between the two?
So for myself, I don't know if it's applicable to me, right? Because for most of my college career, so from freshman to about, I would say maybe halfway through senior year, I was just committed to fully studying. And then in my last semester, I had found that little wiggle room where I could work a little bit for some extra cash. So it was really, I didn't have to worry about, like paying rent or anything like that because I had that support. So I was just able to, figure out that time balance, right? Just being able to set aside the time for work, setting that boundary where I need to take this time to study, I need to take this time to do my research project, and then finding whatever free time I had to go ahead and work. And, of course, always weekends were on the table as far as giving up some hours there to work, and then wherever I could find free time during the week.
So basically my junior and senior year, everything that I listed, I was doing all at once. So I was working as a past leader 20 hours a week because I was teaching 2 different classes. And then I was also doing the medical response unit, and I was working on creating the ambassador program my senior year. So every moment I had, I basically spent in the lab, or I spent working on my actual like thesis. And planners came in very, very handy because otherwise my life would have just been a mess because, I had to have specific schedules of like, okay, I have to attend a class at 8 a.m., but then I have to teach a class at like 10 a.m., and then I have to go to the lab. So just time management is very important. And whatever tool helps you with that, stick to it. Personally, I prefer just having like a planner that I could also like cross things off of my list. That was very helpful to kind of reduce my anxiety of like how many things I have left to do. Um, but you know, I didn't necessarily work for the money because I was paid like $10 an hour. It didn't really make much of a difference. I was doing it primarily for the experience, and it was something that I enjoyed. So if you need to work to be able to pay rent or pay for food, then that's something that's important to you. So you just have to be able to figure out the best way to approach your honors in the major of, I'm working like Tuesday and Thursday, so maybe I can take Wednesday and Friday just purely for my research, or if you want to do a bit every day. So it depends on how you approach it.
I did work. Prior to starting my thesis, when I was doing my perspectives, I was working 40 hours a week at the Capitol, which was just a crazy time to be working 40 hours a week. But so then I think that gave me a good base to like really split my coursework and really figure out how to do balance with that. I would use my lunch breaks as the time that I would have to take class because I was still a full-time student while working 40 hours a week. And then while I was doing my thesis, I worked 15 hours a week, but I treated my thesis and I had to take like coursework with my major while I was taking my thesis. So I treated my thesis as sort of like a sixth class that I would take that semester and really took time out of my days to do the readings or do the research just as I would a normal class, do the homework and stuff like that. So it's kind of that balance and like forcing yourself to sit down and be like, how can I split my time? I did have um, when I was doing my thesis, my bosses were great. And sometimes, if I was gone for a conference, they would be fine with that. Or the day that I defended my thesis, they did let me take off that day. But other than that, for me, I'm very big on commitment. Like if I made a commitment to work and I made a commitment to my thesis, sort of like really balancing that and making sure that I was putting good effort for both. So just really sitting yourself down and splitting, making sure that what you're doing is feasible. Like you don't want to commit to 50 hours a week if you really can't. And really putting time and blocking off your schedule and treating sort of your thesis like a class, especially when it's independent, sort of like what I did. It was sort of like whenever I could, I would go. I didn't have like a set time. So it was really on me to do that.
Great. Well, thank you all so much. I want to make sure we're being respectful of everyone's time. So we do have a couple more questions, but we will answer those in the follow-up email. So thank you, Ava, for moderating. Thank you, Henry, Selma, and Sophia for talking to all the students about your experiences and honors in the major in Europe. This was a really great session. So thank you all for tuning in, and I hope you have a great rest of your night.